Now he says that doing what he's done all those times would wreak havoc. Orrin Hatch then goes on to admit that, yes, both parties have used the process, he says, but only when the bills in question stuck close to dealing with the budget. In instances in which other substantive legislation was included, the legislation had significant bipartisan support. That is a total, utter, complete, 100% unambiguous lie. It is a lie. It is an L-I-E, and I do not mean the Long Island Expressway. It is not the truth. Maybe I'm naive. I find it hard to believe they think they can get away with stuff like this. In 2003, Republicans used reconciliation to get the Bush tax cuts passed. The tax cuts that exploded the deficit. Here's an excerpt of the call that's going out, for example, in Congressman Tom Perriello's district in Virginia.
Hello, I'm calling from the National Republican Congressional Committee with a code red alert about an impending health care vote in Congress. Even though a majority of Virginia voters want them to scrap it, Speaker Nancy Pelosi and President Obama are planning to ram their dangerous, out-of-control health care spending bill through Congress anyway. What's worse, Congressman Tom Perriello voted for this bill the last time it was up and might vote for it again. Please call Tom Perriello now before it's too late and tell him to vote no on Nancy Pelosi's dangerous health care scheme.
Anyway. So the message from Republicans to, again, a Democratic congressman, Tom Perriello in this case, is essentially, you know, look, man, we'll totally go after you if you vote yes on health reform again. But if you change your vote and vote no, we will leave you alone. Right? We'll never, ever call you a flip-flopper. We'll never talk about the time you did vote for health reform, ever. We swear, pinky swear. The premise of this strategy, in other words, is that Democrats are stupid enough to think that after voting for health reform once, Republicans will back off and leave them alone and not try to beat them in November and not run attack ads against them if only they switch their vote and vote no and help out Republicans this second time. Also, they have some watches they'd like to sell you. They're here inside my coat. I swear they're real Rolexes. It is not possible to report accurately on what's been a very bizarre turn of events in the Senate without also explaining that Senator Bunning has a history of bizarre behavior. Behavior that's not just politically strong-willed, that's not just him having extreme opinions on issues, but rather, we mean literally strange behavior, to the point where even his hometown newspaper has at times questioned his mental fitness, saying, quote, "Is his increasing belligerence an indication of something worse? Has he drifted into territory that indicates a serious health concern?" That was from 2004, when Jim Bunning faced a tough re-election battle in Kentucky. A huge northeastern snowstorm that somehow I managed to miss, thank you, San Francisco, has dumped as much as 2 feet of snow on my colleagues at our New York City home base and on my dog, who had to stay home on this trip. I'm sorry, big guy. More than 1 million people lost power in this storm, 330,000 in New Hampshire. That's 40% of the state. 260,000 in Connecticut, 220,000 in New York, 140,000 in Maine, 100,000 in Massachusetts, 25,000 in Vermont, 11,000 in New Jersey. So once again, the most powerful nation in the world has such decrepit, fragile infrastructure that we are stunned into helplessness and are shivering in the dark because it snowed in the winter, like it does every single year. USA. USA. No one should bother engaging with policy hypocrites on policy because by their very hypocrisy, they prove that they do not care about policy. I mean, you in your district, just this week, you were at a community college touting a $350,000 green technology education program, talking about how great that was going to be for your district. You voted against the bill that created that grant. And so that's happening a lot with Republicans sort of taking credit for things that Democratic bills do, and then Republicans simultaneously touting their votes against them and trashing them. That's, I think, a problem that needs to be resolved within your caucus because, I mean, you seem like a very nice person, but that's a very hypocritical stance to take.
Well, Rachel, with all due respect, I can assure you Republicans were not consulted on the stimulus bill.
Whether or not House Republicans felt adequately consulted on the stimulus bill, that's not the point. They all voted no on it, every single one of them. And that's fine. You can be against the stimulus and not think it's going to work and not going to create jobs. You can also be for the stimulus. You can think it's going to work and create jobs. But you cannot be both against it and for it at the same time, unless you are a hypocrite. You cannot denounce it as creating no jobs and then claim that it's creating lots of valuable jobs at the same time. Or you're a hypocrite. But you in your district, just this week you were at a community college touting a $350,000 green technology education program, talking about how great that was going to be for your district. You voted against the bill that created that grant. And so that's happening a lot with Republicans sort of taking credit for things that Democratic bills do, and then Republicans simultaneously touting their votes against them and trashing them. That's, I think, a problem that needs to be resolved within your caucus, because, you seem like a very nice person, but that's a very hypocritical stance to take.
Well, Rachel, with all due respect, I can assure you Republicans were not consulted on a stimulus bill. That bill was filed at 11 p.m. The night before the 10:30 a.m. we began debating it. None of our amendments were considered. There was no debate, no bipartisanship on that bill.
Let me look at Rachel, which is the question about you've called for spending caps out of Washington. But to Rachel's point, does that mean that you will not accept any federal money that comes the way of your district?
No, I think that argument that liberals are making is absolutely ridiculous. With all due respect, Rachel, does that mean you're going to give back your Bush tax cuts that you continue to rail against? The fact of the matter is our country operates and governed by a majority. And I, along with almost all of my Republican colleagues and a good number of Democrats, have voted against the stimulus, the omnibus, all of this runaway spending. But we've lost those battles in the House. And at the end of the day,
but you'll take the money for your district.
At the end of the day, my constituents and their children and grandchildren will be on the hook for the debt that's being created by this majority, and they deserve to have their fair share of federal spending.